Good morning from Buckinghamshire and Oxfordshire in England. I'm delighted to have crime novelist Peter Tickler with me, talking about his journey through the publishing industry and how he came to writing, which is what we'll start with. So, Peter, can you remember the first thing you wrote and how you got into writing?
Um, First thing I wrote was, well, the first crime novel I wrote was Blood on the Cowley Road. But that sorry, I've got a bit distracted by my
That's okay.
the first, yeah. So it's a Blood on the Cowley Road, but before that, I had written a non-fiction book called Modern Mercenary, which was about mercenaries in the
Mhm.
20th century, fighting mostly in Africa and what drove them and stuff. So that convinced me, and that was actually did very well. So that convinced me that I could write in some form or other. And then, but much later on, my wife actually gave me um, a birthday present of a correspondence writing course. So, and I found that very helpful. And in fact, I started Blood on the Cowley Road, the first one, as an exercise on that course. So, and when we'd done the chapter and a whole plot line, you had to do all that. The chap said, "Well, we can't carry on with this book because there are other bits of the course I want to teach you now."
Mm.
But he thought it was worth carrying on with, so in my own time. So I did it and got published. Yeah,
So, what was this? I know we'll be talking about your books another time, but what was the significance of the Cowley Road? What made you? Is it an area you know well, or is
it's
there
an
a
area I live in.
history to it?
Yeah, the Cowley Road is a street in East Oxford. So if you're familiar with sort of central Oxford and the old Oxford, you know you can go down past Magdalen Road, through sort of past Magdalen College over Magdalen Bridge, and then the sort of you get to what I suppose what you might call the town bit. That was all Gown in the centre, kind of the old-fashioned bit,
Mhm.
and then you reach the Gown area, and you've got St Clement's, which goes off up into Headington. You've got the Cowley Road in the middle, and then you've got Iffley Road, which of course famous because it was off the Iffley Road where Roger Bannister ran his under 4 minute mile. So there's
Okay.
kind of so you're in historical part. I suppose that because I'd lived in South Oxford all the time, and I've got 4 kids. They went to the local schools.
Mm.
We went to local sports clubs. We kind of I knew a lot about. I've been there a lot. I also did a little bit of mental health locum work at the weekend, usually in a place off the Cowley Road. So I kind of got familiar with it, and also we were quite fond when we had any money to go any. We'd go along to a very good Indian restaurant in the Cowley Road. So the kids
Mm.
always would always you could eat all you liked, and it was very
Oh,
good
nice.
Indian. So it just became a place I liked to go and was very familiar. So when I was looking for a theme for the book, I suppose I felt like I could write about a mental health setting, which you need some sort of setting, and you need to be able to write about it convincingly.
Mm, sure.
And I felt I could do that. And so I thought where to put it, and I thought, well, I'll put it in the County Road, but not where I work, but somewhere different, and
Mm.
I'll make that up. And that was why, really. I mean, in retrospect, it was. I didn't realize at the time, but the word Cowley Road means an awful lot to people. As a loads of people have been as a student, and they've either been to sort of there's a very good music place down there at the
Mm.
O2 Arena or something it's called.
Okay.
And then there are lots of pubs, lots of different types of food you can eat from not just Chinese and Indian, but
Mm.
Greek, Russian, uh, West Indian. So loads of lovely food.
Nice. Mm.
And lots of people have lived in or near there, whether at university, especially students from Oxford University or indeed Brookes, which is just up the hill, but there's a lot of housing down there. So it actually, for a lot of people, and not just young people, but older people too,
Mm.
County Road actually, if you've lived in Oxford at all, means something. Yeah.
Mm. Mm.
So that I guess that's the story and rather overdone story, but anyway,
So
yeah.
going back even further, did you grow up reading? What got you into crime specifically? Have you always been a crime
It's a
reader?
good question. I suppose when I had this project, part of the course was come up with a novel and plot it. And I thought, well, what on earth do I know? And I had read a lot of Agatha Christie, like lots of people. I'd rather things like Daphne du Maurier, so that's slightly it's not crime as such, but it's some psychological
Hmm.
stuff.
Yeah.
And others, and I think I'd read quite a few other of some of the old-fashioned Oxford stuff.
Would that be
But
Colin Dexter and Morse?
and I'd read, yes, I had read quite a lot of those by then. That is true, but I
Mm.
meant going back further, sort of, not C.P. Snow because he was Cambridge, but I did read him as well. But I mean, it's just, yeah, it's just. I think it was just also we watched my wife and I mean, we had 4 kids, so when we finally got everyone to bed, we would collapse in front of the telly, and often we'd watch some, it might be Morse, but it might be some other crime stuff, and we still
Mm.
like watching crime. So I guess that was why I thought, well, I can't write romantic stuff. I'm not terribly romantic. I just thought crime was the only thing I could hope to write that's in a sort of genre. I mean, obviously they wanted it to
Familiar.
be slightly genre, so
Mm.
crime seemed the obvious thing, and I've always liked crosswords, and I was a computer programmer, so I like working out puzzles and complicated things and making appeal for me. So it kind of fitted, I suppose.
And do you have a routine for writing? Now you're full time, do you set
Uh,
certain hours or just when you can?
I'm pretty chaotic in my writing discipline. Sorry to disappoint anyone out
No,
there, but I'm
that's the
looking for
more
simple
interesting
answers.
answer than yes, I write every, nine
Yeah.
till five or something.
The thing is,
We like chaotic.
writing for me has always been a sort of thing I do alongside work and also having a family. I mean, 4 kids, and
Mm.
even as they grow up and get into teenage, there was still lots to do. And
Dad's
I
dad's
like,
taxi.
is having and then elderly parents, so you're tied up at
Mm.
weekends driving. So you've just had to fit it
Mm.
in when you could. And
Mm.
but yeah, I mean, my wife, if she was here, um, would tell you that I often write on holiday.
Okay.
But we go to
While
write.
she's reading.
Well, reading or walking, yeah, we'd go
Mm.
to usually we often went down to Cornwall actually in off season. We never go in season,
Mm.
and I would often spend the morning writing while she was out walking, and then we'd do something together in the afternoon. And I
Mm.
found that quite helpful because you do need to focus. But I think when I get into a book, I'm probably more focused, or when life is just quieter out there. I mean, at the moment,
Mm.
maybe October, November will be a good time for writing because uh, there's still plenty to do in the garden. We're not quite over the summer. There's still
So
kids wanting to come and visit. We just had one lot of grandchildren, another lot coming up next
yes.
weekend. So it's kind of life is like that, really. But that's life.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I know I should be doing it for every day, every
Well,
day, 3 or 4 hours, but
yeah, but life
yeah,
happens though, doesn't it?
it does, I'm
Especially
afraid.
with such a busy household. So you
Yeah.
started with Doug Mullen, the PI, the conflicted PI, it says
Mm.
in your biography. So what made you then switch to a female
No, it's
detective?
the other way around, actually.
Oh,
It was,
was it? Okay. I went by the publishing date, so I'd got D.I. Mullen as the first one as
I'll tell you why,
2015 and
because that's to do with the complications of being published by more than one.
okay.
And so I was originally published by Robert Hale. They did eventually do a few of mine as ebooks, though they didn't really believe in ebooks. When I signed my original contracts, the word ebook did not appear in the contract. So
No.
anyway, so I actually did the 3 blood in the Carry Road Blood and Grampont Blood in the blood on the Marsh were all Susan Holden and were all published. And then only later did when I'd moved publishers to Joffrey, and then they bought the backlist, and so they republished my
Right.
paperbacks for the blood ones are all
Mm.
republished effectively. Same book, but just that it had never been as a paperback, so I was quite pleased about that. And they published them more effectively as ebooks. They really pushed that,
Okay.
and they're much better at ebook selling than Hale were.
Mm.
So that's why. But yeah, no. So I chose Susan Holden because I kind of I think I've got Helen Mirren's when she played D.I. Tennyson in that series of
Prime
TV.
suspect. Yeah.
That's right.
Mm.
I liked the character there, and I thought, well, I quite like a feisty female, not just all
Okay.
males. I try not to be too sexist.
Mm.
and she just evolved, and I wasn't quite sure what she was at first, and even now I'm not. But
Okay.
she came, so she was the main character in the first three novels,
Mm.
and then she actually appears in some of the later Doug Mullen novels as well. Because I changed publisher, so I kind of with Joffrey, and they said so I had to write find a new protagonist, and then when they published that, they asked had I got any backlist, and I said yeah, but it's with Robert Hale. And then after what they initially tried to buy it off them, and then they didn't get it, and then Robert Hale decided they were going to close because he was, and so they did then buy it along with a lot of other backlists of other,
Mm.
and that's when they all suddenly flooded back onto the ebook
Mm.
market properly, really. Yeah.
So
So that
does
kind
he,
of it's very odd business publishing.
isn't it just? Yes. So do you find are any of your children female?
Yeah, my daughter is. Yeah,
Okay. So
my eldest.
having a daughter and a wife help with writing, do they read what you write from a female whenever you write female
No,
characters?
not really. I mean, my wife usually reads them afterwards. She occasionally reads them before.
Mm.
I don't know really. I think I'm better at writing. I mean, I've written several novels also, but I think I am better at writing females now than I was.
Right.
It takes a while. I mean, I think when I started Susan Holden, I didn't really know who the heck she was, except she's bad-tempered and stuff, and so
Right.
things happen, don't they? You write a scene and suddenly she does something slightly
Yeah.
extraordinary. You think, oh,
Yeah.
should I
Yeah.
keep that in or not? What on earth has driven her?
Right.
But so by the time you've got her in about your sixth book, she
Mm.
actually does, yeah, yeah. I was always quite interested in the mental health side, so and I think in the second book I decided she quite apart from having a anger management problem, she clearly had some sort of well suppressed mental health problem as well
Mm.
within that, and she does become a bit more extreme towards the end. Yeah,
Right.
I still it's interesting because I wasn't sure if people like it, but people are saying, "Oh, I really liked when I moved to Doug Mullen because he's a much nicer person in many ways."
Mm.
They all thought they I had comments from saying, "Oh, what's happened to Susan Holden?" Because I
Right.
liked the fact she was
Yeah.
so bad tempered and
Uh,
everything. So anyway,
you do. I met you once. I can't remember where it was. It'd be somewhere, I guess, between Oxford and Derbyshire, because I was Northamptonshire then. When you
yeah,
were doing a tour with Stephen Booth. It
that's
was
right. I remember.
many years ago.
Yeah, no, I did. Yeah,
Yeah.
he was a really nice guy, actually, I must say.
Yeah.
Very
Yeah.
interesting guy. It went
Mm.
really well, actually, that evening. Very small audience because they were having a new vicar installed or something up the
Right.
road, which apparently took a lot of
Okay.
people away. But actually, I probably sold my percentage of sales that night were probably better than they've ever been. And
Right.
I had this, and I had the booth right next to me. So and he sold a lot too. But I mean, just
Mm.
I thought when I saw it, I thought, gosh, they'll all want to buy his and they want to buy mine. So
Right.
that was the sort of whatever that is.
That's
Anyway, that's
brilliant.
my
Cool.
lack of confidence. But it went really well. And I met you actually at one of that
Be
you were
one of the
giving a talk actually
festivals. Okay.
at a festival that Dave Sivers runs,
Oh, Beaconlit.
Beacon Lake. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, Ivanhoe.
Yeah, that's right. So
Yes,
I think I
That's
was a guest
right.
there one
Yes, you
time. I
did.
went along another time. Yeah, you were.
Yes.
Yeah, so.
Yes, you did. That's fun. Yeah, I missed it this year. My husband decided to plan a surprise trip to Germany. We have friends in Germany,
Oh, right.
and
On that date.
didn't ask the date.
Oh, right.
Didn't
Okay.
check with me beforehand, which was very sweet of him. But I then had
Next
to tell
time.
Dave I couldn't do it. Yes, so I have said, yeah, don't do it in the middle of July.
Yeah.
Have you ever had somebody come up to you, and whether it's somebody you know or well, presumably somebody you know, and say, "Oh, such and such character is me, isn't it?"
Um, I think people do think they recognize characters, but then they're not always the right. It's curious because I suppose a bit of my wife has rubbed off on Susan Holden. I mean, there's a kind of not my wife is quite as bad
Right.
behaved.
I was going to say the nice parts, hopefully.
Yeah, but she's quite a strong character, and that's
Right.
what Susan Holden is. But I mean, I don't know about you when you've been writing, but I find it really difficult to. I never try and get anyone else, model it on anyone because I think that's dangerous because you're
Mm.
so tied up with that real person that you can't then do what you want with them because
Mm.
ultimately you've got to be able to do whatever comes
Yes.
along with them,
Yeah.
And that
Except
might
I've
make them very unpleasant, or she might do something totally
right.
reprehensible, or
Yeah.
kill someone even, but I haven't done that
Yeah.
yet.
No, it's often components, isn't it? I
Yeah.
had a when I lived in Northamptonshire, I had a not very nice next door neighbour that nobody liked, so that was okay. And so I killed him off. I pretended he was different characters and killed him off several times, which is very, very therapeutic.
Okay. And did he recognize himself?
Oh, I don't think he ever read a word of mine.
Oh,
He
right.
wouldn't have done. He didn't like women, so he
Okay.
wouldn't have. If he knew it was my book, he wouldn't have wanted to read it.
Okay.
So yes. So no,
Somebody will slip
that
a
was fun.
copy through his front door and see what
Yeah,
happens.
I should have, shouldn't I? Oh yes, this shopkeeper is you. Yes.
No, it's a funny business, because when you write a scene, I mean, I find when you write a scene, suddenly your character does something you really weren't expecting. Yeah.
Mm. Isn't it
Uh,
wonderful?
it is actually. And then, of course, there's such a good scene, you think, oh, and what do I do with that? And then you thought, well, I don't want to change it because it's such a good scene, but
Yeah,
what does that mean for my character and the
yeah,
plot line and everything
yeah.
else? Which is,
Are you a plotter or do some
well, I had to,
pantsing
you, mostly not,
somewhere?
largely because
Right.
so I'll tell you a story about the Cowley Road one. Was that I had to plot it because that was part of the course. Come up with a, you know, chapter by chapter summary of what's going to happen in each chapter. And
Mm.
I find it, I mean, it was very helpful, that actually. But when I came to write the book halfway through, I actually changed the identity of the killer because it
Right.
didn't work. So, I'd found out, I suppose by writing it, you then start to find out a bit more about who these people really are.
Mm.
And you suddenly think, yeah, that isn't what I want to do anymore. I don't want that
Mm.
particular person to be the killer. For whatever reason, I'm not going to give any more information on that, except,
No.
and so I chose somebody else who I thought was more appropriate.
But I think in a crime novel, you want to steer the readers in one direction anyway. So that would have
Yeah,
been
yeah,
useful
yeah,
to then for them to think it's that character and
yeah,
then go in a different direction anyway.
yeah. I did set
Yes.
up a sort of big red herring. Well, it wasn't meant to be a red herring, but it became a big red herring when I
Okay.
changed the
Yeah.
killer. And actually,
Yeah.
various people who had read it commented on the fact, "Gosh, I never saw that coming."
Mm.
Kind of, I hadn't,
Yeah.
just so I felt quite pleased about that.
Yeah. Yeah. Isn't it annoying when you get, for some reason my right eye is leaking, it does from time to time. Um, isn't it annoying when you have I don't know what your publisher's like, when you have books with this book has an amazing twist, you'll never guess what happens. And I know writers go nuts because especially short story writers in magazines,
Mm,
when their story is tale with a twist, think,
yeah,
well, now readers are expecting a twist. I mean, you're going to get that in crime novels anyway,
yeah, yeah,
but they kind of almost know that if there's going to be a twist, they're being led in the wrong direction, which I think then spoils it.
yeah. I think this sort of tale it's slightly overdone by the publishers. I mean,
Mm.
there are some publishers. Almost every crime book says there's a terrific twist or whatever, or if it's not a cozy, but even then probably.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
just think, yeah, well, can't, not really. Um, it's in some ways that one would like one's book to go out with very little information about what it is, but
Yeah.
I guess that doesn't hook people in. So it's a kind of
Mm.
you have
But
to
it's like
decide.
film trailers. I
Yeah,
never watch trailers. Once they start showing too much, I just switched off.
I know.
And I think I don't want to know. Otherwise, I mean, if it's a romance, you know they're going to get together at the end. But
It's
it's,
quite.
I think
It's,
with most books, it's the journey, isn't it?
yeah, yeah.
You know, in a detective novel that you have the body at the beginning and a detective comes in,
And
and
we'll
that
probably
by the end
find.
of
Yeah,
it, they have to
mm,
solve it,
yeah,
regardless of whether it's a series or a standalone.
yeah. No, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. So do you
Uh,
do you find when you're writing that when you get to the end, it's fairly fully formed? Do you do a lot of editing thereafter?
um, I I think I think it's quite well formed, yeah, because the way I write normally is that I'll write a scene or in whatever it is happen, and then when I start again the next day or whatever,
Mm.
then I will probably read through that scene just to remind myself of what I was trying to do and where I'd got to.
Mm.
So, and in that process, you spot things you're not happy with, and I don't know. I think that's probably true. I mean, obviously, I do a draft. Ultimately, I do a draft in that way. So it's probably had effectively lots of bits have been read at least twice.
Mm,
Uh, and then I'll probably do a draft read when I've finished, but only after, I'll put it away and then read. I
mm,
mean, I'm not one of these people who particularly gets lots of other people to read it until I'm really satisfied. I don't know why that is.
mm.
Um,
I
yeah.
guess because you know if your publisher has a good editor, that you know that they'll
Well, I
pick up
kind of
on
expect
things
them to
that.
do that, and my publisher does generally do that. It won't be just, is it okay to remove this comma type thing, or
Mm,
it'll
mm,
be this bit doesn't work, or
how
asking
about?
you to think about how about this. And I
Yeah.
find that's very helpful, but I like to think mostly I've got it where I want it to be.
Mm.
Yeah, yeah, I hope so.
And what about the covers? Do you get input in your covers?
Covers are an interesting thing, aren't they? I mean, I've gone through various stages. I mean, when I was with Robert Hale, so I've had well, actually four, but one was only for a very short while.
Mm,
And I've self-published my latest. But so the second book, which was called Blood in Grampont, which is the area of Oxford, South Oxford I lived in.
mm.
There's a pic, the image. Got it up here somewhere. It's about the end. I think I've sold out all the back copies and
Oh
I've got
wow.
new but publisher. This is the original one, and of course
Okay.
we've got a different
Well,
jacket.
that's a shame if you don't have a copy. And
Well,
in the
yeah,
racking behind me have all the original ones.
behind the mess of my shirt.
Okay. Okay. Well,
I think
for
I
the
sold
next one.
the last book,
Okay.
but it's just a picture of a woman's going up a stairs. It's just her feet and
Mm,
and she was
okay.
dressed in sandals, and she's it's a scene from a very early in the book.
Mm.
And I said, look, this scene is set in December in foul weather. She's not going to
Ah,
be wearing these sandals
no.
to visit somebody who's doing some work on a house. So they did change it into little boots. They were still quite stylish, I thought, well, she is meant to be quite stylish per character, so that was probably all
Mm,
right. So that
mm,
was one. But then another of my books set in Oxford, one of the later Doug Mullen ones, I was not entirely happy with. But they said, oh, this will sell better. But
right.
I hope there aren't too many people from Joffy listening. But I did have this conversation with them. And the image was quite clearly of Christchurch Meadow in Oxford, which, if you live in Oxford, you will know that.
No, yeah.
And there's a woman in a red coat running and stuff. And
Right.
obviously, red is a very strong color I get for that.
Yes.
But that isn't what happened in the book. It wasn't
Mm,
nothing happened in Christchurch Meadow.
right.
And the key person who it might have been representing was actually wearing a green coat, I think. So,
Right.
it's kind of but they just said, well, it'll sell better. So.
Yeah, you have to kind of hope that the experts know what they're doing, really.
Yeah, I think you do have to trust them, and they generally sell them well and
Yeah.
hard, so that's good. But
Yeah.
I mean, one could still think, I wouldn't have done that. But
Mm,
I'm a
yes.
writer. I'm not a publicist.
No. So
Um,
how are you finding now because now you're traditionally published and self-published, how are you finding, because self-publishing is the marketing is all on you unless you
I'm
hire
finding that
somebody to
difficult.
do it.
Yeah, I mean, it's just the most recent one, which is the Tickler's Jam Murders. So that's set in
Right.
1919. And it's about my great grandfather supplied jam to the
Mm,
troops in the First World War. So there are sort of lots of interesting links. I've just
mm.
put a video actually up on YouTube if anyone wants to go.
Okay.
Literally
I'll have
yesterday,
to look for the link and add it.
my son sort of found it. Just look Peter Tickler on YouTube,
Mm,
and it's actually a very good video. I think. Well, he's a professional stamp, so I expect it.
okay.
But anyway, what was I going to say? So that is self-published. We were talking about self-publishing, weren't we?
Mm, yeah, and
And
marketing.
I think marketing is interesting because I've had some really good reviews, including one from Peter Lovesey, who of course is
Yes.
very well known in that thing,
Mhm.
and he allowed me to put that on the front of my book in the end. I mean, he sort of contacted me after I published it, so we had to add it
Yeah,
later.
I did.
So I felt really pleased because it's not like I knew him and could sort of bend his arm. He just emailed me out of the blue, said, "Oh, really intrigued by this book. Tell me
Mm.
about Tickler's Jam more and stuff."
Yeah, yeah.
And then
No,
said he loved
I
it
love the title.
and couldn't guess the he thought I'd been really clever in the words anyway. So I thought, well, that's a really good marketing tool. But I mean, it's ticking over rather than massive. But
Mm,
I do a lot of talks, so I go around and talk. So I kind of
mm,
feel I'm quite good at that. So I take physical copies along and hopefully
mm.
sell a few at the end. And I do a lot of it. Talks to the WIs, but my wife comes along and we'd play. We have an act to some degree,
Okay.
which always goes down very well about crime writing. It's all about crime
Right.
writing. I don't just say,
Yeah,
I'm the best crime writer ever, just listen to me and you'll learn.
sure.
It's much more fun
Yeah.
than that.
Yeah,
I
they're
get
lovely, aren't they? The ladies at WI. I do WIs as
Oh,
well.
you do? Yeah, no, no.
Yeah.
I get them to help me come up with a plot line or characters and stuff. They love
Yeah.
it. So
Yeah.
that works really well, and you sell a few copies. But it's an interesting game because they seem to be two totally different markets in many ways. The people
Mm,
you see. I mean, some of them will read ebooks, obviously, but out there's all this ebook stuff, and I haven't really cracked
mm.
how to market that. Except I put stuff on Facebook and X, which I'm not sure the X bit
Yes.
much any good. And I've got this as I say, I'm trying out this video which I'll put up on Facebook and things shortly. And
Mm.
I'm probably
Yes,
meant to go onto Instagram and things like that, so I haven't quite.
I'm on there, but I don't do a huge amount.
No, I am
But
on there, but I do very little. So
yeah,
this is my
I've
big chance to.
I've just joined recently joined TikTok because
Okay,
that's the place for videos. But I've done nothing. I've literally just shared on Facebook and Instagram that I'm on TikTok, and people are following me, but I haven't done anything yet.
yeah, okay.
I have
Well, that is, I
that to
think,
look
probably the
forward to.
next thing because my son said, "Oh, it's all out there." I made a note of that it's all
Yeah,
out there. That's how you need to do. But of course, I don't
it
know if
is.
my market isn't necessarily sort of 20-year-old young things. It's kind of older market, a lot of the crime, isn't it? I think, isn't it or not? I don't know.
Especially WI, because you see these not being very cliche, these little old ladies who but they love crime. I sell more crime than anything else.
Yeah,
I
no,
have more titles than that, but
no,
yeah,
no.
they love it's escapism, isn't it?
Yeah, it
On
is.
there. Yeah.
It is. I mean, I get some really, yeah, no, it is. They engage. And what is most interesting, because one of the things I usually ask at the beginning to sort of prepare the way, I suppose. I say, well, so what do you all like? And there's always an Agatha Christie person,
Mm.
but there's usually a Val McDermid or sort of Scandi
The
noir
darker.
person as well. So and they're not all just quaint little old ladies.
No, no,
Because
no. I
I
said,
they're obviously some of their stuff is much stronger than I would choose to read for myself.
mm, mm,
Yeah, so it's
brilliant.
fun.
So having just released, obviously you're busy marketing that. What are
Yeah.
you writing next? What's the next project?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, I'm trying. I've sort of come up with the start of a plot line, sort of 4 or 5 chapters worth. So I have started to write that just to see where it goes.
Mm,
And I like it, as I was talking about earlier. I've got this female protagonist because they seem to like female protagonists, and um, and I don't quite know who she is yet. I mean, I know some of what she is, and I've got quite a nice sort of what happens at the beginning thing. So I
mm,
think there's a good hook to pull people in quite quickly. But I haven't quite worked out who she is, I know she got a background, maybe, lost somebody.
right.
She's got anyway, that's the main. So that's what it's so that's going back to what I said earlier, that when I've written a few scenes with her, I'll start to get a proper grip, I
Mm,
hope. He
yeah.
says, hopefully,
Is she a
on who she
detective?
is.
Is she a
No, she's
detective? Is this
not. No, she
okay?
so this is a kind of I'm not sure how much I'll bring a detective in. This
Mm,
attempt to go slightly not quite cozy, but I mean, I'll tell you where it is at the moment, and it might come to nothing. But it's basically
mm,
somebody who's takes therapy on Zoom at home, as
mm,
a lot of people do now,
mm,
and well, especially ever since COVID.
mm,
And when she's in the middle of a session or at the beginning of a new session, the the therapist there's a phone call. The bell rings. Says, "I'm just going down to see who's at the door."
mm,
And apologizes. And she's just had a bit of a state. She's been in a bit of a state. So she tries to calm down, and when she comes back, it's just in time to see some different person's legs coming across the room. It's clearly somebody different because she'd noticed that her therapist was wearing pajama trousers for
Oh,
the therapy session, which got a bit puzzled, but it's something
yeah.
you noticed. And then the person at on the other end slams the laptop casing down, so suddenly
Mm.
it's over, and the question is, what's
What's happened?
happened?
Yeah.
And
Brilliant.
because it's online, she's only ever done it online. She's not actually met this guy in person. He was
Mm.
recommended, and she's found him very helpful.
Mm.
But she doesn't even know if she lives down the road or in another county. So
No.
and then it's gonna lead on from there, really. And
It'd be fun for you to find out.
it will actually,
I
because I'm
think.
also thinking because I've got a way in which she can work out, have a guess at where he is based.
Mm.
But the question is, at the moment, I'm
Yes.
thinking Northumberland, largely because I've just been on a very nice holiday there, I think.
Nice.
But otherwise, it might be Cornwall or somewhere. It needs to be somewhere
Yeah.
I know a bit about. And I think
Yes. And you can
Northumberland
go on
actually,
research trips to
well,
remind
yeah,
yourself.
it's a long way to go to Northumberland
Yeah.
again, but I'd
Yeah.
like to. I don't know if my publisher would like
Yeah.
that. And my
Right.
accountant, I'd have to ask him if I could put £1,000 on my.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But yeah, no, I think. But I mean, and then you've got to think, well, where do I set it? Somewhere totally made up there or not?
Mm.
It'll probably be near places I know, not
Yeah. Because you
necessarily.
say that with the Cowley Road book, you based it on the road, but somewhere that doesn't exist. Do you find it
Yeah,
easier to do that? Have a mix of what you know and
I love
making it
writing
up.
about places I know. I mean, I do, especially and that's why I started with an Oxford crime rather than rock crime anywhere else, because I just knew
Mm.
the place, and I
Mm.
decided early on, which is probably a bad marketing thing, that I didn't want to do, you know, bodies in a bodleian or dead dons in the sort of
Mm.
senior common room.
Mm.
I wanted it to be town really, not gown,
Yeah.
and yeah, so I love writing about, and so so I'm very careful about writing when I'm writing Oxford. It mostly really does exist. If I say he turns left down James Street, there will be a James Street
Well,
he's turned left down.
yeah. Because there
And
will be somebody who'll email you and say that's a one-way street. He can't turn
well,
left or.
I haven't had that yet.
Right.
Well, I had a really two things from the County Road. Sorry, I had to keep going back to the County Road,
No,
but
it's okay. Yeah, no, carry on.
I had a review of my first book from people called Daily Information, who are based in the County Road.
Mm.
Literally, their office is just up from where and they said, "Oh, it was a very nice review." And they said, "We couldn't quite believe that one of the key bits of events, the places that's key to the whole thing,
Mm.
doesn't really exist." And this
Right.
was, I'd made up a car park. Well, I'd moved a car park actually a whole mile down the Cowley
Oh,
Road to be where I
oh,
wanted it to be.
right.
And so I thought that was a really nice, because so a lot of the other stuff was very accurate. I'd referred to a bike shop, which exists. I referred to a music
Mm.
shop that exists. So that
Mm.
I established already quite a strong, this is really Oxford.
So
The only problem is if you read it now and walk down the Cannon Road, you'll find
they're not there anymore.
the music shop doesn't exist, has moved away.
Oh,
The bike shop was burnt down, so that moved up the road as well. So
wow.
bizarre.
That's the trouble because I my the first of my serial women series is based in Northampton, and I wrote it within a month, but then put it away and came back to it. And over the year that I then came back to it and edited it, one of the bars had closed. In fact, it had closed and reopened and closed and reopened, and so I just gave it one of the previous names and thought be done with it because a year down the line things will change because that's set in different restaurants and bars around the town. And then the follow up is Tring and Hemel Hempstead.
Mm.
And my mum lived in Tring at the time, and I knew Hemel Hempstead from having been grown up in Amersham. And I set their newspaper offices next to the tall tower by the Plough roundabout, the
Right.
magic roundabout as people call it.
Yeah.
So that doesn't exist, but everywhere else. And she then goes down to different restaurants in Hemel Hempstead and Tring. So those are real locations. So I've done the same as you, where
Mm.
I've chosen a location that doesn't exist.
Yeah, I
And
think
then
somebody have to. I mean, you have. I once wrote a scene that was in a pub, and I initially called it what it really was because I was being really,
mm,
this is real pub. And I
mm,
realised I'd turned when I'd written it and reread it. I realised I'd made the chap behind the bar rather race
Yeah.
and homophobic and
Yeah.
not very nice. So I thought, okay, have to change the name
Yes.
of the pub because
Yes.
I
That's the
didn't
thing. If
want
you,
that scene in.
yeah.
But so it's a good. On the other hand, in Blood on the Marsh, I think it was. I wanted a safe place that a person might meet, might go every day. Somebody with on the sort of spectrum,
Mm,
and so there's a very nice ice cream shop called George and Delilah in the middle of Cowley Road, and
nice.
it's very big. So I had him going there every day, and then somebody who's tracking him comes in and meets him there and offers to buy him an ice cream and all that stuff. And there are actually two or three scenes in there, and that was really nice. But then I didn't. I know that was perfectly safe because I didn't
Mm,
slag off anyone, any of the
no.
staff because they were all lovely anyway. Their stuff they change a bit, but they're all absolutely lovely. And I've
Mm,
launched some of my books from there of an evening. It's great. It's
yeah.
a great way because one of the things about launching a book is, what? How do you launch it? Do you get everyone in and pay for an awful lot of wine, and then find you've absolutely made a negative? So I just take them on the ice cream shop, manage to negotiate
Everybody
a bit of
buys
a
ice
deal for
creams.
them, but they all buy their own
Yeah.
ice cream at half price.
Yeah.
Nobody
Yeah.
expects me to fork out for 4,000
Mm,
ice creams, well,
no.
100 ice creams, and
Mm,
have a lovely time because it's nice. So that's a tip for anyone out there wanting to.
yes.
You
I
need to
I
make a
d-
profit on your launch.
absolutely. No, I did the same with the first serial because one of the venues is a local to me at the time is a local cafe. So she goes in that, not actually on one of her dates, but she goes in there. So I did a
Yeah,
launch there, which was it's a tiny cafe.
yeah.
So it was a
No, people are
busy
always
for a
very
small book.
accommodating to help out, actually,
Yeah,
I find. Yeah, it's really,
absolutely.
really nice.
Yes, especially if they're mentioned in a book. It's free advertising and
Yeah, well, I think they just like the idea of Oxford's a very
yeah.
creative place, so they like the idea of
Mm,
creatives going along and doing things.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. That's
yeah,
brilliant.
yeah.
Well, it's been an absolute pleasure. So hopefully come
Oh,
back and
uh,
chat about your Cowley book
yeah. I'm happy to
and
always talk about
others.
my books. Sorry.
Yes, absolutely. No, this is why we're here. No,
Yeah,
it's brilliant.
yeah,
And
yeah.
hopefully we'll have a live audience so I can sit in the background and let you converse with your readers.
I would be very
So
happy to answer
yes,
questions. Yeah.
thank you.
Thank you very
We'll
much,
be you're
Morgan.
very welcome. Yep, we'll be doing that from October.
Okay,
So not that long. We'll put the word out and get some people along. Thank you
okay,
so much. Okay,
okay. Very
speak to
nice
you
to meet
soon.
you.
And you. Bye bye.